Hello and welcome back to the Spotlight Games podcast for episode 110. Today we have our impressions of several new games from this month, including Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, and more. But that's not all. Earlier today, PlayStation showed off more than 15 games during their State of Play, so we're going to unpack that for you as well. Joining me this week, not as always, our sweet dumpster boy didn't make it. He fell into a death pit.
Dumpster.
A dumpster. He fell into a dumpster. That would have made a lot more sense to say he fell into a dumpster. He fell into a death pit, and he's very sick. He's trying to become the new face of NyQuil. So in his stead, we have Jordan, aka Cognitive Clips, riding shotgun. Jordan, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Pretty good, man. I feel like you kind of have a type because, Dumpster Boy's out, he's feeling sick, and so you just find the next person with depression that you can talk to about video games with, and here I am. So let's do it.
I feel like my personal goal with this podcast is to just bring a smile to people's faces, and who better to do that with than people with depression? You know what I mean?
That's what I always say.
It just works, is what I'm trying to say. It just works. Jordan, how many weeks ago was it that you were last on the show? It feels like it was just yesterday.
I believe it was 3 or 4 weeks. It was that first week of January, I think.
That's right. And since then, how's life? Tell us how the world of Cognitive Clips is going.
It's been pretty good. Got back in the swing of work. Since I work for the local university, I got a nice 2-week stretch off for the holidays at the end of the year, which was really nice to get to hang out with the wife and kids.
Love that.
And then, of course, there's Martin Luther King Day that also throws another holiday. So it takes a bit to kind of get back in the swing of January.
Sure.
But once I got there, it's been pretty smooth sailing since then. So
here's a question for you as well. Before we jump into the show, this is something that I used to do with guests that I've not done in a while, but I'm bringing it back.
Bring it back.
And I stole this from actually 2 separate podcasts. I stole this from GameScoop, and then I stole this from Kind of Funny. I have a guess of what some of these answers are going to be, but I want you to be able to tell your story. I don't want to tell your story for you. What's your favorite game of all time, Jordan?
Ooh. At the moment, gun to my head.
There is
Tears
a gun
of the Kingdom
to your head right now. Tears of the Kingdom.
It's just off screen. Oh, right there. Yep.
Tears of the Kingdom. Okay. And what? So it's we're early in the year. We're only 31 days in. But what's your game of the year so far?
Ooh. Man, that's tough. Because we'll go into detail here in a minute, but I've been checking out a couple of these new releases from this year, and man, probably leaning more toward Prince of Persia: Lost Crown.
Okay.
Again, going off of avid listeners may remember my rule from the predictions episode that I'm basing this off of games that I've already played at least partially. So we'll see. I don't expect it to stay the top spot for the entire year, but it's gonna be in the discussion. It's a great time.
And then final question in the get to know you segment before we jump into the show proper. What's your favorite game from our childhood?
Ooh.
Really just completely putting you on the spot here. There was no prep.
Super Metroid. I mean, it's not even that difficult.
Not even that difficult.
I still play that every year or two.
Okay.
On the Switch or whatever other Nintendo device is allowing me to do so.
Would you say Super Metroid was one of the first games that really got you into gaming?
For sure. From that era, it was like a lot of that, a lot of Super Mario World, a lot of Link to the Past. Still, obviously, 3 of the greatest games of all time by pretty much every metric.
Sure.
Of course, some Mario Kart, some Mega Man X, all that. But the ones that really, really stuck out, for the long term, were Link to the Past and Super Metroid.
Right? Yeah. So. Love that. Well, thanks for sharing, Jordan.
Thanks for asking, Patrick.
I'm just here to ask questions and listen to answers. We have a lot of video game stuff to talk about because this is the Spotlight Games podcast where each week we spotlight the latest and the greatest in the world of video games. You can get it by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Spotlight Games Pod or by searching for Spotlight Games in your favorite podcast app. And hey, you can be on the show by tuning in as we record live, just like Tony Thomas, handsome Tony, in the chat for the first time in what feels like months. Welcome to the show, Tony. He says, shout out for Metroidvanias. I agree. I agree. We're going to be talking about a Metroidvania later today. You can tune in as record live Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/SpotlightGamesPod. So be sure to follow us there so that you're notified when we go live so you can be part of the conversation. And if you haven't already, get off that cute little ass of yours and join the Discord. We have a fun little Discord where we discuss what we're playing and generally goof off together about video games. So if that sounds like something you'd like, click the link in the description of the YouTube video or in the description of the podcast that you are currently listening on in your favorite podcast app. It's also in the bio of our socials, or just text me if you have my number. I say, I want to join the Discord, and I'll send you a link. I don't want to speak for people, Jordan, but the Discord's a lot of fun.
It really is.
We're having conversations every day, but what we're playing, news of the day, sales. We talk about new games on sale that we're going to pick up. And a lot of the time we just gang up on Cayman. He's not here to defend himself. So right now,
that's what he gets.
I think we should gang up on him right now. No, we shouldn't. We should be kind. Jordan, we normally start our shows here on Spotlight Games every week by talking about what we've been playing. And today will be no different than those episodes of our past. Jordan, I want to start with you, our guest of honor. What have you been playing, Doggy Dog?
Well, so tail end of last year, we were talking about this briefly just before the show started.
Yeah.
Tail end of last year, caught the sales, finally picked up Alan Wake 2, and I also was bequeathed Super Mario RPG as a gift for Christmas. So just literally the past week and a half, wrapped both of those games up, which is a lot of fun. I know we talked a lot about Alan Wake 2, but I mean, what a game.
Come on.
I know I'm a little bit lower than you on it just because like survival horror type of combat, I wouldn't, as Cayman has said before, that's not really like overall what the game vibe is. Like It's a lot more, psychological, a lot more, other elements that aren't like a Resident Evil type of survival horror.
For sure.
But the combat still falls in that same kind of vein. And that's just not really my jam. Same thing with RE4 Remake last year. Great game. Sure. It was a little bit lower on my personal list just because like that kind of combat doesn't really get me going. But overall, just a fantastic game. Had a lot of fun with Super Mario RPG as well. But even more recent than that, though, Prince of Persia: Lost Crown.
Tell me all about it.
I'm about 7.5, 8 hours into it. Going by what the internet's talking about, that's probably about halfway-ish.
Okay.
They said it's about 15 for just blazing through, and about 20, 25 for finding all the secrets and doing all that stuff. Having a blast as your handsome friend. All your friends are handsome.
Well, I try to make it a rule. I try to make it a rule.
Yeah. As he was saying, Metroidvania's rule, just up here above me would be you could see the collector's edition case for Metroid Dread and an unopened copy of Metroid Prime Remastered for the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, amazing.
But yeah, I mean, that's always been my jam, as the Super Metroid fandom hinted at a minute ago. The combat is super slick. I mean, it's challenging, but in a fair way.
Sure.
It's the type of thing where you come out of the encounter unsuccessfully, what you did wrong. That you missed the parry window. That you should have dodged, but you tried to parry or whatever it is. So I'm really liking that. Going through and finding all the new powers and upgrades and stuff is a lot of fun. Story's intriguing. I mean, again, I'm only at the halfway mark at the most, but it's really cool so far.
Sure.
Pretty much all around. So, and the visual style is just, I mean, I'm sure you saw from the trailers, like just
it's such a pretty game.
Like the splashes, and it's just, it's great.
Yeah. So Shrag Daddy 69 in the chat, will you invite me in to talk about Prince of Persia? That's actually what we're talking about right now, Andrew. So this is what we're gonna do. Andrew, answer the phone. I'm calling you right now. You're gonna be live on air to share your impressions. Hello?
Hello?
Andrew?
Patrick.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Jordan, can you hear Andrew coming through the phone right now? He give me a thumbs up. Andrew, what do you think about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown? You're live on Spotlight Games right now.
So much fun with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm having a bit of an anxiety because my favorite host from Spotlight Games told me it should take about 16 hours to play. I'm 12 hours in and at 37%, so I don't really know if I'm the opinion you want, but I'm having a great time.
Look, we play games at our own pace. Just because howlongtobeat.com says the average is 16 hours doesn't mean that's going to be the case for everybody. Tony Thomas in the chat asks, is the rewind mechanic in this one? Andrew, I'm going to ask you, can you rewind time like you can in Prince of Persia Sands of Time in this game?
Sort of. You can set it's like a ghost character. So you can set him, give it a shot, and right before you hit life's end, you can sort of rewind. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd say yes.
Okay. Yes. Would you said you're 13 hours in, you said so far?
Correct.
Would you recommend this game to listeners that like playing video games?
I would recommend it to everyone.
Every single person.
Like games, listeners that don't like games.
Wow.
It's aesthetically pleasing.
Okay.
You're going to find a couple of characters in there that you can resonate with. And the gameplay is just hard enough to where it challenges you, it pushes you. And then if you get to a point where you want to throw your controller, you can go in and adjust like the fighting difficulty or the obstacle difficulty. It's really a customizable event. I
love that. Well, Andrew, thank you for answering on such short notice to share your opinion with all the listeners of Spotlight Games.
Thanks. This is the highlight of maybe all of 2024. So
hey,
I appreciate being here.
Anytime. You're always welcome on the show.
Bye.
Bye. Jordan, anything that you disagree with from the Asheville report from my brother Andrew?
No, that hit the nail on the head, man. I will add, though, speaking of all those accessibility options and stuff, that there is a great video by Steve Saylor, the Blind Gamer, that kind of goes over some of those features and just kind of his... I think he even may have called it an accessibility review, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure.
But it's great. Obviously really cool to hear that type of perspective from somebody who, for lack of a better phrasing, needs it more than I do.
Sure.
Just physically and literally. But again, with all these kind of things, if you build something from the ground up with accessibility in mind, then everybody wins.
Yeah.
So let's just do more of that.
This is an accessibility feature that I have only come across somewhat recently, of it being more than just like colorblind modes and like where you can actually manually adjust difficulty settings within a game, like from the enemies to your health to their health. Like, I wish every game did this. Last year, or actually this might have been 2 years ago now, that game Tunic on the Xbox.
Yes.
That was the first game that I came across where I was like, oh wow, I can like adjust all sorts of little sliders for enemies and myself, and it made the game so much more enjoyable for me because that game like secretly is really hard. And I was like, I
wouldn't even say secretly. It is a hard game.
It is a hard game.
We just give a shout out to Tunic though. That game was incredible.
Incredible game. But I was like, after a certain point, I was like, I just want to have fun and get through this game, and I can't even get through like half of these encounters. So I'm gonna be invincible, and I'm gonna have a great time. And I tell you what, I sure did. One more question about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown before we move on to the next game we're going to discuss. This game comes from a listener, Jacob. He wants to know, how does this perform on the Nintendo Switch? Because you're playing on Switch, correct?
I am, and it is fantastic. One of the reasons, there's a couple of reasons why I got it on Switch. One is just I had a physical copy of Super Mario RPG from Christmas. I played it, I enjoyed it, and I was like, I want something new, so I've got to trade it in and get some, money back or whatever at GameStop. But also, I remember it was probably Ubisoft themselves put out that report recently that was like, here is the performance for each of the systems, and no matter what system you've got, then you're hitting 60 FPS.
Cool.
Obviously, the resolution is going to be lower on the Switch than on my PS5, but it performs really, really well. I actually kind of prefer it in handheld just because of that. The OLED is just just beautiful for the because again, like as your brother was just saying, I mean it's just so flashy. The colors just like the game itself, the art direction is fantastic. I mean, I can't say enough good things about the art direction. One cool thing, I think they've probably showed it off in the trailers too, is like if you do what's like, I think they're called like a perfect parry, then there's like a short animation where he like will, do a flying knee to their chin or something like that. But whatever he's doing, um, it's like a it's like a red background with like silhouettes, kind of like almost like the assassination animation from some of the Fire Emblem games.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so it was like, it never gets old. Every time that you land it, you're like, yes, I get to see this again.
Yeah. Andrew in the chat says, it's sexy is what it is. Just say it. Would you agree
it's
that
sexy.
It's sexy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the little bit that
it's causing problems in my marriage. From
the little bit that I played, I was playing on my computer monitor, and I was like, this game is too pretty to have on such a little screen. Unless it was the Switch OLED, I'm sure.
Right.
Because this computer screen has nothing on the Switch OLED screen. So I need to go back to it. But Jordan, before we get to your other game, the reason I've not gotten back to Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is because I've been dabbling with a couple different games. I'm going to talk about one of them, and then I want to pass it back to you.
Sure.
A game from last year, Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, the expansion of Cyberpunk, that so many people were really high on last year. And as I've said on the podcast before, I started another playthrough of Cyberpunk on the PC this time instead of the PlayStation, and having a lot better of an experience this time around than my first time on PlayStation for whatever reason. And I finally got to the point where I felt comfortable enough going into Phantom Liberty. I've done a lot of the side quests. I haven't finished the story yet, but some of the folks in Reddit were like, you should actually play it before you finish the story. Just treat it as a side quest, essentially. So that's what I'm doing. And man,
didn't Cayman, I'm sorry to interrupt. Didn't Cayman bring that up too with like that it takes place kind of at a certain
that's
point?
right.
It's not like in the post game. It takes place in like the middle or like the latter section or something weird.
I can't speak to the end of the game because I haven't gotten to the end of the game, but hearing some of the things that they talk about within Phantom Liberty, I'm like, oh, I would be surprised if this doesn't have that like ludonarrative dissonance if I were to play it once the story is actually over.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but yeah, man, I tell you what, Phantom Liberty, if you like Cyberpunk or if you've been interested in Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty is your sign to go back or give it a try. It is so impressive. It has some of the coolest like set pieces that I've played in video games in a long time. And also just like the writing. I think something that didn't click for me the first time around with Cyberpunk, and I think it just happens to be like the certain missions that I went on in my first like 5 to 10 hours way back in, well, I guess it would have been like 2021 maybe that I played it for the first time. Just that stuff didn't click with me, but now the writing for this, like the characters they've introduced, Idris Elba is in it, and he's not even the best part, to be honest.
Really?
But like graphically, it's so impressive. Like I feel like the motion capture that they did for Idris Elba, they knew because it's Idris Elba. It seems like they put so much money into it to make it look so unbelievably good. Like it really just looks like I'm looking at a live Idris Elba on my screen whenever he's on.
He had hella dots on his face in that studio.
Yes.
To get this to work right.
But I'm just really impressed with how much Cyberpunk has completely turned me around from my first experience. A year ago, I would have said, you don't need to play Cyberpunk. And now I'm like, everyone needs to play Cyberpunk. And I'm just surprised that I got to this point, to be honest. I haven't finished Phantom Liberty yet, but I'm having a really good time with it. And I think it's definitely worth your time if that's something that sounds of interest to you. Jordan, I know there's at least one other game you've been playing.
Indeed.
Tell me about it.
So the other night when I was getting frustrated with a combat encounter in Prince of Persia, rather than turn down the settings, which I'll probably do next time, I just turned on Granblue Fantasy Relink. So I mentioned this during the draft episode. I want to say they maybe had like a Summer Games Fest trailer or something where I saw it and I was like, this looks pretty, and I'm getting very strong Tales of Arise vibes.
Yeah.
Which I know me and Caven share this adoration for that game because it's just incredible. I mean, top to bottom. And I played the demo for Prince of Persia as well as Granblue Fantasy Relink. I think they released demos like just a couple of days apart in the middle of the month, and really liked what I saw in the demo. So I took a chance. It was technically a pre-order. The full release isn't until tomorrow, but I went ahead and took the chance on the pre-order on Monday, which granted me early access for no additional charge. I was able to actually play the early access of this game, which apparently is not always the case for some people. For other games, I don't know. There's something in the news about
Oh,
that lately.
yeah.
So I know
A game we probably
that
will not be
really does
talking about
suck.
on this show is
No,
Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
yeah, no, it does suck for the fans who really were invested and tried to do that. But
for sure.
Anyway, back to my thing. No, Granblue, it's a ton of fun. So I'll kind of set up a little bit because I was lost trying to find anything about this game for a bit and find out what exactly was going on. So there was a mobile slash browser game that's just called Granblue Fantasy.
Okay.
That was pretty much Japan only. I found out just this week that you can like log in English like for the browser version, but there is no app in the States for iOS or Apple or Android, anything like that. So Granblue Fantasy Relink is technically kind of like an extension of the story that they've already started to set up in the app and browser version. And the basic premise is that you can pick either the male or female protagonist, and they're on this sky island. That's kind of how the world is set up, is like a bunch of floating sky islands, which is dope. Um, but they had this letter from their father that they, I guess, had a great relationship with, but he had left a couple years back, and they get a letter from him about he's waiting for them at the end of the skies, this like kind of mythical place that they call Esta Lucia, I believe. Um, but then some sort of event kicks off the narrative, and you run into the forest, and you find this young girl who's about to be attacked by this evil fascist empire kind of people. And in the process of trying to save this young girl, you're about to die, but then said girl does some sort of life link with your protagonist.
Okay.
And so now they're like their lives are literally intertwined. Like if one dies, the other dies. And so therefore now you're on this adventure together, and there's a whole bunch of other cast of characters that come along as well. But that's all kind of like has been set up and established in this mobile game slash browser game. But the nice thing is for Relink, if you want to know all that, if you want to learn all about these characters and like their history before the game started, you absolutely can. There is like pretty early on within the first couple hours, you get to one of the main hub worlds, and I think they call them Fates episodes, where it's just narration about their characters and like what happened before the story starts for this game, which is again that's really cool for people who want that, who want to learn more about the world, because the world that I've seen so far is pretty cool. And again, very pretty to look at, as you can see. But you also don't have to. Like, it's not forcing you to like watch some 2-hour cutscene to catch you up on the story. If you just want to go in and play an action RPG with a really fun combat system and really pretty visuals, then you can just do that instead. And you're going to have fun either way. But yes,
yeah, it's giving Genshin to me. It's giving what's the Tales of Arise? It's giving that a little bit. How would you?
For sure.
I don't know if you've played Genshin, but how would you compare it to Tales of Arise so far? How like would you say on the same level, generally in the same stratosphere? Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah. So as far as visual style, it's not identical at all. But as far as just general vibes from the visual style as well as the combat, a lot of overlap with Tales of Arise, in my opinion. Of course, I also felt like there was some similarity between Tales of Arise and Final Fantasy 16's combat, at least to some degree, as far as just the action-heavy portion and being able to you're pressing square and triangle, then you're holding down one of the shoulder buttons and pressing one of those buttons to do like your elemental or like your special attacks or whatever. So all of that is present also in Granblue Fantasy Relink. As far as story, it doesn't seem like it's going to be as like deep / kind of horrifying as either of those games.
Sure.
But again, like not every game needs to be that.
True.
It seems like it's it's a fun adventure. You're running into these, I think they're in the trailers. They mentioned there's like primal beasts that seem to be growing restless, and you're trying to figure out why. And they also hold the key to finding the ends of the skies to go see if you can reunite with your father and blah blah blah. So yeah, as far as narrative and story, it seems a lot lighter, but not in a bad way. Coming to it not knowing any of these characters aside from playing the demo, they're a lot of fun so far.
Nice.
One of like in the tutorial basically of the game, one of the first things you do is go and check in with some of your crewmates, and even just doing that, you get to see kind of some of their personalities, how they're going to be, acting with each other and stuff. Which is it's fun, it's cute, and I think there's like maybe 20 playable characters.
Oh wow,
just kind of insane.
Do you like hop between them at will, or is it like narratively? Okay, now you're playing as character 14 or whatever.
So if it's a story mission, then like the main protagonist, who they all just call like the captain. It reminds you of Mass Effect. You can name the character, but all the characters in the game will just say like, "Captain, come here," or like, "Listen to the captain." They're not going to say like, Commander Shepard. Sure. Kind of like saying Commander Shepard instead of saying, Patrick Shepard.
Yeah.
But if there's a story mission, then the captain has to be in the party somewhere, but you can control whichever person you want to out of the 4.
Gotcha.
So again, that kind of reminds you of Tales of Arise, because there's only 6 characters in Tales of Arise really for the main party, but you could control whoever you wanted to as far as exploration and in combat.
Cool.
But then there are also any of the side quests and stuff that aren't story based. You can have any 4 characters you want. It doesn't have to be the captain. And there's also online co-op that you can do for those as well.
Last question. As someone who I play the occasional action focused like RPG type game, but they're not a go-to genre for me. As an example, like the Final Fantasy VII remake, a little different, but I was like, I wish we had just gone back to the original style. Final Fantasy 16 is a better example where like I kind of would have preferred the turn-based. As someone who isn't like, this isn't always my favorite genre, do you think this is a game that I should consider, or do you think this is more meant for like super fans of the genre?
I think you should at least consider it. Again, because what's cool is that, kind of like Tales of Arise again, that the different characters also play differently.
Okay.
So the captain, regardless of which, if you choose male or female, they've got a sword and they have like wind elemental type of damage and powers they can use. But other characters I've seen that have like, dual swords. They'll have like a flintlock type of rifle, or they'll have like a giant scythe, or they'll have a spear or whatever. So there's like a whole different types of play styles that you can choose from as far as those characters are concerned that you can control in the combat. So if you don't like a whole bunch of hack and slash, but you do like action games, then you can maybe find the guy who's more like a heavy melee type of battler or something like that. So
there's options here, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and from what I'm understanding, again, just from the internet's discussions about it, the campaign's about 20-ish hours, which is obviously a lot on the shorter side as far as action RPGs, JRPGs are concerned. So you're not going to be stuck with that fighting for an eternity.
Sure.
And plus, there's the demo as well, so you could always check that out.
That's true.
First.
Maybe that's probably step 1 is the demo.
I don't think all 20 characters were playable in the demo, but a huge chunk of them were. It was a huge chunk.
Cool. Okay, well, positive vibes, it seems.
Yes,
overall.
Very positive vibes.
And it looks like you're going to get some points for Fantasy Critic with this. So always like that. So to close out what we've been playing, because, we have a lot of games to report on today because we only have the one topic of the show. And, rest in peace, Cayman. Sad that he's not here. I do wish that he had at least been able to be part of this conversation to share his thoughts of Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, but fear not, because I've been playing as well. Also, we got John in the chat, Rabbit128. He says, is that Jordan? The answer, it might be.
Who's to say?
Who is to say? I'm not. He certainly isn't. Also, I'm putting kid to bed, so I might not respond. Fuck your kid, dude. The podcast is live. What are you doing? Okay, Like a Dragon Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, I am shocked to say this game fucking rips, dude. Cayman wanted me to play Yakuza Like a Dragon so badly when it came out. It was his game of the year that year, and he just loves Ichiban Kasuga so much. And I tried it, just didn't work for me. Talked about it last week with Evan as our guest of last week because he had just started playing it. Something about it, I mean, I don't know that if I just wasn't in the right mindset. I don't know if it just hit me at the wrong time, but it was just so weirdly goofy that I was like, this is so much goofier than I was expecting. I'm like a taxi driver, but I forget what they're called. But I've like, it's like a horse drawn cab, like cab kind of. And I'm like rolling people around. It's like a crazy taxi essentially. And I'm like, what is, why am I doing this? Like what game is this? This time around though, now that I understood that going in, I love how goofy this game is. Like the amount of off the wall weird shit in Infinite Wealth is so endearing and so charming. And I get now why Cayman is so into this franchise, because Ichiban is such a lovely character. He is a dumb himbo that just wants to put a smile on people's faces, and he's going to do whatever he can to bring happiness to those around him. And
just like everybody with depression.
Exactly. You know? And like at the beginning of the game, like I guess minor spoilers, but it's not going to ruin your experience. One of the main like kind of driving forces is because, he's formerly in the Yakuza. He's like trying to get people that are trying to leave Yakuza like back into the real world. And he's this like social worker essentially, and like his one goal is just, if you are trying to leave the mob and you want to re-enter society, I'm your guy. And it's just this like really charming, like heartwarming thing.
That's adorable.
It's so adorable. And like so many of the enemies that you fight are so goofy. Like there's this portion where you're going through these sewers and there's this person wearing like a trash bag that looks almost like the Pokemon Golem, but it's just like trash. And then there's another character wearing this like sleeping bag, like head to toe, and it's just their face out of the top of the sleeping bag, called a squirm worm. And it's just like the weird, like you're always fighting such weird enemies, but it's all set in like realism. So it's like a person in this outfit. And it's like, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it is the enemy design is hilarious. Like just the general design of the world is great. And also, as someone who has had the fortune to go to Japan, like it's really cool going around this city and it feeling like it kind of feels like I've been there, which is a really cool experience. Although only the first part of the game is in Japan. The bulk of the game, if you've seen the trailers, this isn't a spoiler, takes place in Hawaii. I
was gonna say, did you play the right game? Because I thought it was in Hawaii. But
yeah, it is. But the first like 4, maybe 3 hours is in Japan.
Okay.
So I in terms of how long I've been, so like, this is only really like very early impressions. I'm like 4.5 hours in. I've just got to Hawaii. I'm maybe like an hour into Hawaii. So like a lot of the kind of the bigger mini games are starting to open up to me. I don't have access to the Animal Crossing thing yet, but I do have the ability to go on like Tinder dates essentially, which is so goofy. And I've also done, there's this thing, I forget what it's called, but it's essentially like Pokemon, but instead of catching you are catching monsters.
Is it Shujimon?
Shujimon, yes. And
I saw somebody talk about that earlier. Okay.
So the monsters that you're catching are creeps. Like the first one that you catch, you fight, and it's just this creep in a trench coat, and his only attack is to open the trench coat and flash you, and if his attack lands, you're stunned for a turn. Like it's so goofy. I'm having a great time with it. It's so much deeper than I think I expected in terms of all of the different game modes and mini games, and like it seems like this is a game that if I see it through to the end, I expect I will probably push 100 hours or maybe more. I don't know for a fact, but it feels like there is a lot to this game. But
you just said you're frozen for it, or you're stunned for a turn, so it's turn based.
So it is. It's like it's this weird. It's not turn based in the original sense where like everyone is like standing still in place and like they have that like idle animation. But it does a cool thing where, you know, whatever character that you're controlling at the time, because you do have a party at certain points in the game, there's this like circle around them, and you can move within the circle at will. So you can like get closer to an enemy, and they'll move around like in their own like invisible circle too. But they don't have to necessarily be within the circle to be attacked, but like there's certain like bonuses if you can get close enough to them and things like that. So it's turn based, but it feels like an active turn based, if that makes sense. But like if you know, when it's my turn as Ichiban, if I could just sit there forever, like they're not gonna attack me until I attack. So it is definitely turn based in that sense. But it's not nearly as action oriented as, say, the Final Fantasy VII Remake turn based system. That is a lot more kind of combat, fast paced, action driven.
Gotcha.
So far, at least in my experience. So yeah, all of that to say, I'm sure Cayman will give his full report when he's back next week. But if Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is like a fringe game for you, like, yeah, it looks like it'd be fun, but I don't know, or like I don't, you know, I've not really played a Yakuza game before. It feels like jumping in now would be confusing. I watched like a 35-minute recap video and I feel totally caught up. I think it's worth your time. I'm having a great time with it. I will report back next week. I'll probably be a lot further in next week, but so far, you know, I've not played a ton this year yet, but it is certainly my game of the year so far. You know, only 31 days in, but I'm
Nice.
having a great time with Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and I think everyone should play it.
Yeah, it got incredible reviews. It was pretty
Yeah.
awesome to see it, like what 90 or 89 or whatever it was.
Honestly,
Like,
that's what tipped the scale for me. Like I had seen so many trailers for it. And it's like, oh yeah, like the Animal Crossing part of it looks fun. You know, it looks goofy, but it wasn't until so many people were like, no, actually, like this is incredible, that I was like, okay, I will give it a shot, and I'm glad that I did because I'm having a really, really good time.
I'm glad you did too.
Thanks, buddy.
You know,
Jordan, we're 30-something minutes in, but because we had so many games to report on. And
so
we have
many.
even more games to report on because today PlayStation had a state of play. They showed off like 15-something games like that. So we're going to recap it. We're going to highlight it. We're going to talk about what was shown. And it's going to be a gay old time, Jordan, as they say.
They
Jordan,
do say.
overall thoughts on this state of play, because you know sometimes a PlayStation state of play can be a little hit or miss. You know, sometimes they bring the hits, sometimes it's a total turd. General impressions before we kind of go line item by line item in terms of what they showed, what they announced. What was your vibe of this PlayStation state of play, kind of at the 30,000 level view?
Yeah, I thought it was a good overall presentation. I mean, I think that lately the big three have done a pretty good job of kind of managing expectations beforehand. So, you know, they told us there's going to be about 15-ish games over 40 minutes, and we're going to get bigger updates for Rise of Ronin and Stellar Blade. And guess what they gave us major updates for? Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade. I caught the, we talked about this earlier off camera, but caught the report on the leaks that had come through, which were, of course, almost perfectly accurate. So there were some games in there that Judas being the big one.
Yeah.
That I absolutely cannot wait for that game. So the fact that we got a new trailer for it, I was very excited to see. For some reason, I'm still like, even with the updated info for Stellar Blade and Rise of the Ronin, I'm like, these can be really cool, but I'm like, there's just like this little part of me that's not fully sold.
I am surprised at how much I didn't care about either of those games in the state of play.
Right.
Yeah. But okay, let's jump into it. I mostly echo your thoughts. I think overall it was very solid. I'm more excited than I am not. You know, if I go game by game in terms of what they showed, but it certainly wasn't all fives across the board.
Agreed.
I'm gonna try to do a little screen share situation, and we can kind of go through as. Nope, that's not gonna work. I tried to go full screen on it, so you're not seeing the bar of my. But the way that I'm sharing,
just close whatever tabs you don't need us to see, bro.
Oh yeah. You really don't want to see of the other tabs, Jordan. No, so they opened the show with Helldivers 2. This is a game that they've shown so many times. It's coming just over a week on the 8th of February. But the kind of the big thing here, which we already knew, but the big thing here is instead of it being that top-down gameplay style, it's over-the-shoulder third-person, like not massively multiplayer, but very much online co-op driven. I don't know about this one, Jordan.
Yeah,
I don't know about Helldivers. It's certainly one of the things that didn't look very good to me. Is Helldivers 2 doing anything for you?
not really. I don't know really anything about the franchise as a whole. I mean,
did you play the original? Let's start with that.
No, that's what I was getting at. It was like I didn't play the original. I mean, like it looks visually, it looks good.
Yeah.
Like what I'm watching happen is pretty to look at. I don't always go for this style of game, so I mean, it's not really been on my radar whatsoever, to be honest. But again, I mean, I hope for the fans, and I know Greg Miller's been kind of looking forward to it. Hope that it works out for them. But
for me, Tony in the chat, Helldivers was so good. The original I loved. It was so fun. It was like that dumb fun. Yeah, and like, calling in the mech was the coolest. Like, and it had a very fun thing where like friendly fire was a thing, and so you would call in mechs, and if they landed on your teammates, they'd go splat. And so
I like that.
If you could get a group of people to play with, it was a ton of fun. But it was one of those games where like it was certainly made to be played with a group. It didn't quite work solo. I played a lot of it because it was one of the first games of the time when the Vita was a thing, where you could play on the PlayStation 3 or the Vita, total cross-play, cross-progression, that kind of thing. So I mostly played on the Vita. So it was like, as you would kind of progress in the game, it would just get so hard that it's like, oh, you actually need a group of people. And I kind of never went back. But I kind of, I wish that it was still over the top in a way. Like, I don't want to necessarily completely write it off without trying it, because it is going to be on PlayStation Plus. But I think so. Unless maybe I'm thinking of Foam Stars. I don't know for certain if this is going to be on PlayStation Plus.
Very similar experiences that were.
But it just, I don't know. Helldivers, it's a wait and see for me. Not totally sold on it yet. After that, we got a big look at Stellar Blade, which is a game we've seen before, but this was another one. It's funny. I said leading into this, it was more things I'm excited for than not. But Stellar Blade, this didn't convince me that I should care about Stellar Blade. It looks very Bayonetta-esque, which isn't a bad thing, but what they showed me didn't sell me on this being a game that I have to play. And it comes out in like 3 months. So like, this is one of the biggest looks we'll probably get of the game. But I'm curious, Jordan, did Stellar Blade, any kind of takeaways for you on Stellar Blade?
I think it does look like something I could really enjoy. I mean, please remind me, was somebody from Platinum Games involved in this? Or it was I can't remember if it was Platinum Games or if it was somebody from the team from like Nier Automata or something.
It might be that. I forget. Let me see if I can find out.
Even if not, obviously very similar vibes as far as the combat and some of the settings and stuff. But for some reason, I could have sworn that early on I heard them saying something about that.
I'm just looking at the tag words. I'm not seeing like Nier or anything, so unsure. It might be though. That would track based on what we saw. It certainly would track that it's either Nier adjacent or Bayonetta adjacent for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, post-apocalypse sword fights. I mean, I can dig some of that. It kind of reminds me a little bit not only of Nier, but also what was it? I lost it. Other games, yeah, you know that one.
Yeah,
the other games that reminds me of.
It certainly, like. Here's the thing with this game.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just remembered. Scarlet Nexus.
Oh yeah. I never played Scarlet Nexus. That's why I couldn't help you.
It's a fun one, but cool. Continue.
I feel like a game like this, I'm not anti-action game by any means, but this, for me, the story will have to deliver for me to care. And what this trailer didn't do for me was tell me that the story matters to me. And so, for the people that I just want to play a fun action game with a bunch of hacking and slashing, probably this trailer delivered a little more for those people. But for me, yeah, I don't know. Just nothing about it. Even in the VO, which we're not sharing here, we're just doing the visual for the B-roll. Even the VO, I'm like, do you care about what you're saying? Because it just seems like they're not sold on what they're telling me.
We open in a post-apocalyptic Earth.
Yeah, it's like
we're fighting aliens.
I love a soft voice to kind of soothe my ears. But if you're trying to convince me that I want to play this game, they didn't do a very good job of it. But for those of you listening, those of you watching, am I wrong? Should I care about Stellar Blade? Did I just not see what I should have seen? Because it just didn't work for me. After that, let's scrub ahead a little bit on this B-roll here. We got a little Sonic action, a little Sonic Cross Shadow Generation. So this is essentially another remaster of Sonic Generations. I say another because we got a remaster back in the 360 era. But now you can play as Shadow. There's new Shadow-driven content. Jordan, are you a Sonic guy?
Not really. I'm not anti-Sonic by any means.
Yeah.
I've never been a mega fan.
Yeah.
I've played a few of the games. They're fun. But yeah, I've never gotten super deep into it or the franchise as a whole. So this is, again, one of those things where I'm happy for whoever wants this.
For sure. Yeah, that's kind of how I am too. What I can say is I think objectively it looks good.
Yes, for sure.
Visually it looks good. It looks fun if this is your game. I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Shadow. I love that he just fucking skates around. I love that Sonic is so fast, and he's also as fast, but skates instead of
and also
runs.
Guns sometimes
and guns sometimes, and he says bad words from time to time, which I also like.
I think he said it. I think he said heck in this trailer.
Yeah,
Can I say heck? Can I say heck on your podcast?
You can say heck on my podcast. You can say anything you want on my podcast. Well, there are certain things you can't say, but you know what you can't say, because that's just a bad thing to say.
We had to go over it before the show started to make sure I understood.
So yeah, Sonic Cross Shadow Generations is a game that's coming out. After that, Zenless Zone Zero. This is in development for the PS5. This is from the people that make Genshin Impact. So Andrew, if you're still with us, this might be a game that you find some interest in. But this was another one for me where visually it looks cool. I like the art style. It looks like what they're trying to show me looks fun, but just not a game for Patrick. So I can appreciate that this looks good. I don't think it's a game that I'm going to play. Did this do anything for you, Jordan?
I think without a doubt, I can say that this is a game that is coming out.
There we go. You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first.
Yeah, it will release. Yeah, this is. I remember seeing something about. Did they have a Game Awards trailer this year, or a little brief little thing?
I think they did. I think they did. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I said, it does look. It looks good, as far as the presentation and all that. Don't know if it's gonna be up my alley or not, but
yeah. And this one I almost can echo exactly what I just said for Zenless Zone Zero with Foam Stars. It looks good. It looks like if you like the competitive, fun shooters, they're trying to not compare it to Splatoon, but it looks like Splatoon with soap. If you want Splatoon on PlayStation, this looks like it. It looks like they're gonna deliver on that. I just don't. That's not my genre. It's not my game. It's not my preferred play style. So this certainly, I know for certain, is launching on PlayStation Plus. So I'll probably give it a shake to see if it surprises me. But I don't expect that this is going to be a Patrick game.
Yeah, this is not my alley whatsoever.
Yeah. After Foam Stars was a game that is up my alley because it's a game that I've talked about on the podcast. We talked about it a lot over 2023 and Game of the Year discussions. Dave the Diver, which I'm not certain if Dave the Diver was already on PlayStation because I played it on Switch. Okay, yeah, coming to PlayStation this April. But the interesting part about this trailer is that it also shows off Godzilla. and there's like a Godzilla crossover with Dave the Diver. What this means, I honestly have no idea. Like, I don't understand what Godzilla and Dave the Diver
it has
means.
implications. I don't know what those implications are.
Right. Like, is Godzilla, in this shot that they show when he comes out of the water and he's looking over your sushi restaurant, is Godzilla gonna like destroy the sushi restaurant and you have to like rebuild it, or what? I don't know. So I'm interested to see like what this is, coming May 2024. So, because there was also the Dredge crossover that Dave the Diver did.
Right.
So it seems like they're all about the crossovers now, which is great. But did you ever play Dave the Diver, Jordan?
No, I didn't. I mean, I heard so many good things about it. I've seen some gameplay of it from some of my friends that are streaming it, but I never took the dive myself.
Oh, you fucking.
Should I?
It's really.
Should I leave?
You shouldn't leave. You should please stay. Please don't go. No, it's good though. I definitely recommend it. After Dave the Diver, they showed us a game called V Rising, which I guess is a game that's like been in early access, perhaps. It's a survival game. You play as a vampire. Apparently, from the research that I've done, which is very little, it's like very survival game. So it's very much like resource management, base building, things like that. But the twist on it, instead of it being like an arc where you start with like nothing, you start as a full-on like vampire lord. And so I guess the combat is a lot more, or it's a lot more combat focused in ways. Like, it looks cool, it looks visually appealing. It is a game that I want to see more of, because I just don't know a lot about it. Tony in the chat says V Rising is very popular on Steam for the PvP. Interesting. 3 letters that'll get me to not give a shit about a game is PvP. But that's just me. Like, that's just who I am. I just don't love PvP, mostly because I'm bad at video games and I will lose, and losing isn't fun. But V Rising does, like, I'm surprised at how interested I am just on the visuals. I just hope that it doesn't end up being a game that I won't give a shit about, which honestly it probably is exactly that.
Yeah.
Did this do anything for you, Jordan?
I come in the same boat. Like it.
Yeah.
I'm not really big into a lot of the survival style of games.
Yeah.
Shameless plug. Me and my buddy Bobby over on Bob Meets World on YouTube. We've been playing through some Wizard with a Gun, which is honestly a lot of fun. And there is like a resource, like at least like a base building component of that.
Yeah.
But I'm in it more for the camaraderie / the more roguelite. Going back into the halfway destroyed world and to find the different stuff or whatever. So survival doesn't really do it for me a whole lot, but like you said, it does look, I mean, all these games visually look very presentable.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so after V Rising, at first I was so confused because they showed a Silent Hill game that isn't Silent Hill 2. And like, we've known about some other Silent Hill games, but I don't think we had heard of The Short Message, which is a free-to-play game that is out today. Very much looks like they tried to make a proper PT from the little bit that they showed.
And it's apparently being streamed by friend / enemy of the show. No, friend of the show, Jerica, over on JK Games, I believe, started streaming this just before we went live.
Yeah. So if she's still live when we're done here, because you're not allowed to leave, you're here now, and that's the contract. But but definitely go check out Jerica streaming this game, because I'm interested to see more about it. And it seems to me, my guess is, Jordan, that this is like, because what they show next is Silent Hill 2. It might be like how do we introduce Silent Hill to a new audience before this game with the number 2 on it comes out? It's free to play,
if you will.
Right? It's free to play, so you literally won't lose anything by playing it other than time, if it sucks. But yeah, so I certainly want to give it a shot, because after that they showed Silent Hill 2, the remake that we've seen bits and pieces of, but this is the biggest look we've gotten from it so far. Curious, Jordan, did what they showed us of Silent Hill 2 remake speak to you in any way?
Again, survival horror is not really my wheelhouse.
Not your cup.
One when it came to RE4 Remake and Alan Wake 2, they were extenuating circumstances, so to speak. I played the original RE4. It's the only one I've ever actually played all the way through that I can remember back in the day. So I had to play the remake, obviously. And then for Alan Wake 2, I'm just a problematically love control.
Yeah.
Bought it 3 separate times. It's just, I love it so much. So I had to,
Yeah.
had to do it to him, as
Had
the
to.
kids say. But again, those are kind of exceptions to the rule. These games don't really do it for me.
Yeah,
I was jump scared way too much in Alan Wake 2.
That makes sense. I'm very excited for Silent Hill 2. The crazy part to me though, so I played Silent Hill 2 for the first time in 2022 during October when we were doing a lot of spooky game coverage that year, and I had a blast with it. Really, really good time. We have an episode from back then, a bracket episode of the best horror game of all time. Did Silent Hill 2 win? Only one way to find out. That's to watch. But I had a great time with it. And it's one of those things where like I didn't expect to want to play Silent Hill 2 so soon after playing the original. But the crazy part to me here is that I went back a little too far. Let's click here again in the B-roll. There's no date still?
In development? No.
How is there still no date for this game? I feel like we've seen so much of it.
We've been talking about it a lot.
A lot. And like, there was that video that PlayStation posted of like, these are all the games coming in 2024. This was in it. So like the expectation was, oh, Silent Hill 2 is coming 2024. So I would have at the very least expected them to put 2024 on the screen. But now I'm like, is this even coming this year?
Right.
It's so shocking to me because
they not understand that we have fantasy critic leagues?
Exactly. Because this is on my team. And I need to know, because here's what I will say, Jordan. While I am excited to play Silent Hill 2, visually, that looked a bit worse than I was expecting. Some of those animations, some of those character models looked, dare I say, janky, dare I say, from like last gen. Now, graphics aren't everything. Like you can love a game, and I can love a game. In fact, I have loved many games that don't look like they're pushing forward the visual like side of the medium. But like not Silent Hill. Survival horror is like one of those genres where more often than not, it's not as much as like a racing game, but it's a lot of the time it's like a visual showcase because there's just not as much being done in terms of like, it's usually a very linear experience. It's usually like smaller environments. Like they have the ability and the bandwidth to be able to really put in a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort into making things look as good as possible. Because they don't have this like massive sprawling world that they need to animate.
Yes.
But like this, I'm surprised at how not good it looks for a very small, in quotes, video game.
Yeah.
Lots of corridors, lots of rooms. But yeah, I don't know. I was surprised by that.
To piggyback off that briefly before we get back to the showcase, I meant to bring this up a couple weeks ago, but Bloober Team, I believe, is working on the remake, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever play the medium?
I didn't, actually.
Because I did, and that was a treat.
Yeah?
As far as... it has some horrifying, awful things in the story.
Okay.
Like, literally, not like, oh, it's a bad story, just like the things that have like, traumatic things, like triggering things for people.
Okay.
So it's not a like, yay! No, it's like it was the first game that I played on my Series S that was actually made for then next gen, but I guess now we could just call it current gen.
Cool.
So check it out. It was on PlayStation Plus at one point. It might still be on Game Pass, but I highly recommend that game.
Yeah, it's one of those games where so many times, like because of Game Pass and because of PlayStation Plus, like there have been so many times I've looked at the game and have almost started playing it or downloading it for free or whatever, and then I just never have. So this is helpful, Jordan. This is helpful.
Yeah, but it's visually it's incredible. Yeah.
Back to the showcase. This after Silent Hill 2 was Judas, which is a game being made by Ken Levine. If you don't know the name Ken Levine, he was the mind behind the original BioShock and BioShock Infinite. This is a new studio that he is heading up, and a lot of the former BioShock team is working on. And this game did everything for me. This trailer, like, I am so excited for Judas. It's one of those things where the first half of the trailer is just like vibes. It's very much like cinematics, but then you actually get to see some gameplay, and it looks so good. It looks like it's like, you know, what I think most of us have kind of always expected with Judas, which is like a spiritual successor of BioShock. Excuse the yawn. And this game looks so good. Do you agree, Jordan?
I do. So they showed the first trailer and at the Game Awards 2022, and I was completely floored. I mean, this was one of the ones I've told you about my buddy Tyler that I like live react back and forth at the Game Awards. Like, we were both just like, oh my God. Like, every single thing from even that first trailer was just incredible. And like, I'm pretty sure the next day at work, I mean, no, it wasn't my lunch break. I watched the trailer again like 4 different times. I could not stop. It was just so well done. Like the vibes were immaculate. So yeah, when I heard the rumor that they were going to be showing Judas again, I was very excited, and it did not disappoint.
I'm
I mean,
so glad.
It looks phenomenal.
I know. I'm so glad that part of the rumors weren't fake.
Right?
Because I don't know, man. There's something about a Ken Levine trailer. I think my most watched trailer of all time, of anything, movies, shows, games, is BioShock Infinite. The trailer was the best part of that game, but it's a good game.
I love that game.
It's a good game. Don't get me wrong, but I wish that we had got what the trailer was.
Fair.
This game, like if they can nail what this trailer is showing us, this whatever year this comes out, which they didn't give us a window, I would expect next year maybe 26, but I would be surprised if they're showing us this much and it's not a 2025 game at the latest. Is like certainly front runner already for game of the year for me for that, like just based on the trailer.
Yes.
It looks incredible.
Speaking of the release, so I don't remember at what point exactly, but sometime probably early last year, I would wager may have been Ken Levine, may have been somebody else on the team. They said that they are expecting it by spring 25.
Okay, cool. That tracks. That makes sense.
Yeah.
After Judas was a bit of a VR moment, which, you know, VR isn't really a Spotlight Games thing. So for the sake of time, I'm going to just breeze past both of these. And what I'll say is, and Jordan, feel free to jump in as well. What I'll say is neither the trailer for Metro Awakening or Legendary Tales convinced me that PSVR 2 is worth my time. That's what I'll say about both of those trailers. Anything to add there?
I mean, the price point alone turned me off of VR.
Yeah.
Pretty much until it's an actual necessity to play any games ever. So
yeah.
I will not be diving into the ecosystem at any point in the foreseeable future.
After that was a shocking one for me. And it's shocking for me because all of a sudden I am so excited about Dragon's Dogma 2. This is a game that I've seen multiple trailers for. And for whatever reason, the trailers have just never grabbed me. And a few days ago, our sweet dumpster boy came and already texted me. And he said, I have this sneaking suspicion that Dragon's Dogma might surprise us and be Game of the Year, or like a Game of the Year contender. I forget exactly what he said. I'm sure he'll correct me next week if I'm getting it wrong. And I was like, I mean, I'm not going to say you're wrong because I feel like I've not seen enough of this video game, but I'll be surprised if that's the case. After seeing this trailer in the state of play, I will no longer be surprised if this is like a strong Game of the Year contender because it looks so good. Do you agree?
Yeah, this is just a treat.
I didn't expect that I would be wanting to play Dragon's Dogma 2 on March 22nd, and I really want to play Dragon's Dogma 2 now on March 22nd from this trailer. Visually, it looks stunning. It look like I don't really know what is happening in the game. I don't know how much of a sequel it is. Like I don't know if I need to like go read about Dragon's Dogma 1. But So Tony in the chat says the magic was phenomenal. I've heard that. I've heard that like the magic and like the way that magic works in the game is really satisfying in a video games. And a lot of people say it's like the best use of magic in a video game that they've played. So that I'm like, I love magic in a game. First of all, so that box is checked.
I almost always start off maining, whatever you want to call it, like a magic based or force powers based or Mass Effect based.
For sure.
What do they call that in the game?
Gravity?
No.
What did they call that? Tony, if you remember, help us out.
Why can't I remember that?
It was the magic in Mass Effect.
But like an adept, type of whatever.
I'll just say Mass Effect magic. Let's see what Google tells me. Biotics.
Thank you.
Biotics. Yeah.
Terrible fan.
There is Tony in the chat. Biotics. No, for sure. I'm the same way. I love the magic.
I am probiotics.
There you go. After Dragon's Dogma, Rise of the Ronin, another March 2022 game. This was one of those, as you mentioned earlier, Jordan, one of the games that they kind of led with is, hey, you're going to see a lot of Rise of Ronin. You're going to see a lot of Stellar Blade. We certainly saw a lot of Rise of Ronin. I'm curious for you, Jordan, did what you saw of Rise of Ronin move the needle for you in terms of a game? Like, is this a game that you're going to consider as like a day one on March 22nd?
A day one, absolutely not.
Is there anything that they could show you between now and March 22nd that would convince you to do day one?
I don't think so, honestly.
I don't think so either. Unless the reviews are like 10s, I think that's the only thing that would convince me at this point.
Right. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was something about even like one of the big trailers that we got a few months ago that I was kind of like, it didn't look quite right. It looked like it was almost like a last gen, like some of the animations and some of like the character models and stuff.
I agree.
And I mean, I think I've hinted at this before in the chat during episodes, but I don't hate it. I like to exaggerate just for the fun of it, but I was not nearly as high on Ghost of Tsushima as most people seem to be.
Sure. It's something I don't know that I'll ever forgive you for, but continue.
Yeah, that's fair. Solid 7.5 to 8
out of 7.5 or 8, right?
Out of 10. But like it just, I don't know, it didn't do it for me. And this game just reminds me so much of Ghost of Tsushima. Obviously there's a lot of things that they can do with this setting and the story and whatever else. I'm not saying that this is any sort of like carbon copy by any stretch.
No, for sure. But interestingly, to your point, this in ways also reminds me of Ghost of Tsushima, and that's why I don't want to play it very much, because I loved Ghost of Tsushima, and this looks like a worse Ghost of Tsushima. Like, it looks like a less interesting, visually very good gray, very brown.
Right.
So it's like it's not visually appealing.
And like, can you rewind it for a second?
I can.
What if they were just jumping back and forth like it was?
I think I went back a little too far.
That's fine. It's like here, like some of these people, like over here, like I'm pointing. You can't see where I'm pointing, but like just watch some of these like background people.
Oh,
like,
wow,
they're moving. It is like
that is goofy,
jank.
Yeah, it is jank. And like for a game coming out in less than 2 months, I would expect that kind of jank to not be present in a trailer. And Tony in the chat says he's having Tenchu vibes from this, and Tenchu's not a game that I've played. But
Same.
I just, I don't know, like this, I'm surprised because I love like a Ronin Shogun type setting.
Yeah.
But I just don't think I can be bothered with Rise of the Ronin, and that's disappointing to me.
Yeah.
After Rise of the Ronin was a game, or a trailer rather, for a game that I really liked when it first came out. It is I don't even know that it's a full remake as much as like a remaster, a re-release of Until Dawn for the PS5 and PC coming later this year. If you don't remember, Until Dawn is the game very much like The Quarry, but it was like the first of its kind from this studio. The studio name is escaping me, even though it was probably just on screen, but I wasn't looking.
Ballistic Moon, is that right?
That is not right. So that must be the studio that is doing this remaster re-release. But that's not the original studio, is what I mean by it. You are correct that that's who's doing it, but that's not the original studio.
Yeah, I got you.
Hayden Panettiere, Rami Malek, Peter Stormare. These like, it's supposed to be like a teen horror movie as a video game, and when it first came out, loved this game. And I just don't know that it's a game that I need a remake for. I'm sure this is going to be like a PS Plus game. I have a feeling this is going to be a PS Plus game. So maybe like in October, if this comes out in October, which I bet it will. Probably a fun stream game, because these kinds of games, they always have those plugins where you can have like the chat pick for you, and so that'd be fun. But I'm surprised at, for a game that came out, and I want to say 2013, I might be missing the mark a touch. I'm surprised that 10 years later on much better hardware, it doesn't look like a lot better. Like
no, it doesn't.
I'm surprised by
it does
that.
not.
I like the trailer a lot. Like I like this, like the kind of cinematic part with like the dolls and the dollhouse. But like when you actually see the character models, I'm like, oh, I'm surprised that this doesn't look better. But if you've never played Until Dawn, when this does come out this year, you'll probably have a lot of fun with it, because it is a fun time. But I don't know that it's going to be one that we'll need to go back to if we've played it already. And then after this, they closed out the show with Hideo Kojima. And I say Hideo Kojima because the next like 25 minutes, it's not true, it's like 12 minutes, but it's all Kojima stuff. It's
still a lot.
Death Stranding 2, and then he announces another video game, but we'll get to that. First, they started with Death Stranding 2, got a release year of 2025. I don't believe we've gotten a year before today.
I don't think so. I think you're right on that.
But a very, very long trailer, mostly cinematics. There's a little bit of gameplay involved, but mostly cinematics in the classic Kojima style. We got a subtitle. It is called Death Stranding 2 On the Beach, which, I can be persuaded when the game comes out, but I think it's a pretty bad title, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's not good.
But we got puppets. We got Lea Seydoux' weird hands on her shoulders. Here's what I'll say about Death Stranding 2 On the Beach. I didn't love the first game. I appreciated the first game for what it was, which is a weird fucking time. But the gameplay I didn't think was very fun. I didn't really like the USPS feeling, like walking sim mail delivery of it all. But regardless of what you think about the gameplay, regardless of what you think about Kojima-san himself, there is a style to this series that I think is awesome. Like right now, if you're not watching the B-roll, we just got if you remember what the original Death Stranding trailers, the BB like in the like throat kind of view, and the BB looks up like he did in the first trailers, but out of his mouth pops this like ship, and then it's like going up the esophagus, and then they take us to the ship, and now Walking Dead's Daryl, I forget his name, and Lea Seydoux are like monochrome.
Norman Reedus,
thank you. Norman Reedus and Lea Seydoux are like monochrome, like black and white in this color world for no apparent reason. And they're just like walking around talking. And I'm like, I love just the weird fucking batshitness of Death Stranding.
If nothing else from Kojima, that's what you're going to get.
Right. And like, I appreciate that. And like later in the trailer, I'm going to skip ahead to Troy Baker returns as who the fuck knows. But he's in the, like, he has this like Joker vibe going on, and he's got a guitar that he can like fight with, and it's just, I love it. Like, I am so here for how weird this is gonna get. Am I gonna like it? Who knows? Am I gonna play it? Yes. Am I gonna understand it? I guarantee you I won't. But
no one
it's just
understands
about the vibes. Did you play the first Death Stranding?
I did not. Yeah, it just didn't look interesting.
It's a weird game.
I've heard about, the themes, and that's totally great messages and themes and all that. It's just not my
for sure. I love this little like puppet character that I hope we see a lot more of. But yeah, I don't know. The rest of this trailer visually is very appealing to me. The
puppet moves kind of like some of those NPCs from Rise of the Ronin a little bit.
That is true. But like the combat that they're about to show, and then just like visually, it's one of those things like you can always count on a Kojima game to be like really visually appealing.
Yes.
Whether it's graphically, art direction wise. And so like I appreciate that. And I'm here for that. Because by the time, this comes out next year, I'm sure they're going to be getting even more juice out of the PS5, and it's going to look incredible. So yeah, all here for Death Stranding 2, even though I'm probably not going to like it. And then after that, they closed out the state of play, Jordan. Not with Elle Fanning, but with another announcement. Herman Hulst came back on stage with Hideo Kojima to announce that he is making yet another game. So he has this OD, which is the Xbox game.
Scream Simulator. He has Death Stranding 2 on the beach. And now he is announcing that he is going back to the action espionage genre with a new game. And he says next generation. So this, likely will be PS6, because he says they're going to start development after Death Stranding 2. So like this game is not even close. And the fact that they're announcing it today, I think is so fucking wild and stupid. But part of the announcement is that this, which I think he has said the last like 3 games he's done, this game will also be a movie. And at the end of the trailer, the drone pans out and they're on like Sony Studios in association with Columbia Pictures for what they're calling at the moment, working title, Physint. What does that mean? I'll scroll ahead to that so we can see it. I think I'm remembering correctly. It's on the billboard here. Death Stranding 2 on the billboard.
Physint, Physint is what this is being called at the moment. Working title.
Oh my God.
And this man needs to be stopped, Jordan. I as positive as I was in general about Death Stranding 2, the fact that he's announcing his next game already when he's already working on 2 games, I think is criminal, if I'm being completely honest.
And the fact that literally 12 minutes of a 43-minute presentation were just from this man.
Right.
That's more than a fourth of the presentation. Like,
it's so weird. And like the same thing happened at the Game Awards.
Yes.
He's just built such a persona, and he's built such a presence, I guess, that it's just, people are just like, how long do you want, Kojima? And he's like, give me 12 minutes.
He's like the video game version of Scorsese or something. Where like every time he says anything, there's like 14 articles. I'm like, I don't care that some 80-year-old man doesn't like Marvel movies. Why is that a story? Yeah. Why do we need to talk about this for a week?
Yeah. It's so strange to me. But here's what I'll say. I'm excited that he's going back to action espionage. As silly as I think it is that he's announcing this game that probably won't come out at least for 6 years. At least for 6 years.
Minimum.
Truly minimum. Because Death Stranding is probably like fall 2025. So they do some pre-production end of 2025 and they start in earnest in 2026. So like, we're not seeing this game before 2030.
No.
But I do love the Metal Gear games, which are action espionage. And something that Herman kept saying in the video was, I've been wanting to see like what Kojima can bring back to this genre. And I'll be honest, I agree with him. I agree with Herman. So we'll see. So many things can happen between now and 2030. So who knows if this game ever even comes out. I can see us flash cut to 2029. It's like, I thought Kojima was going to be making a espionage game, but so yeah, so that was the end of all the announcements. So top 2, top 3, like what were the big standouts for you, Jordan? As we send our audience on their way here shortly.
Again, Judas definitely takes the cake for me.
Yeah.
I have been just dying to see more of that game, and it could have said 2028 at the end. Be like, okay, cool, but I saw some more of it, so it's fine.
For sure.
Thankfully, it didn't say that, but I'm just so excited for that. I'm not even like the world's biggest BioShock fan or kindle, but like Infinite was my first one I ever played. Actually, went back eventually, played the first one, but still, just that it's a cool gameplay style, and the trailers are just, like you said, the vibes are immaculate. I just cannot wait to dive into that.
My new working theory before you continue is I think you would like BioShock Infinite more if that was the first BioShock you played.
Fair.
Because for me, this doesn't need to be a BioShock conversation, but I was like, actually, let's not even talk about it. That's a different conversation for a different day. Continue your thoughts.
But that reminds me of my working theory is that between Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, whichever one you saw first is your preferred movie.
Interesting. Okay. This is a whole topic that we need to do at some point.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Perfect.
But again, like, if I had to pick another one, I liked what I saw of Stellar Blade as far as like the combat and stuff, and like I'm a sucker for some good melee action. I'm a sucker for a post-apocalyptic setting. So
for sure.
Again, I'm not there day one for very many games anymore.
Yeah.
Just budget and time constraints. But I am curious to see how that pans out as far as critical reception. If I like this trend lately of demos, because again, Prince of Persia, Granblue both had demos. Both showed me how much fun they were going to be before the game came out, so I could judge it for myself. So hopefully we see some of that moving forward. But again, for most of those games, not all, presentations were great, but just not really up my alley. Personally.
For sure. Yeah, for me, I think that my two big takeaways. I'm gonna go with 3 actually. Judas, easy number 1 for me. I'm so excited about Judas. And then after that, I would say Dragon's Dogma 2. Half because of the surprising nature of it. Like, I didn't expect that I would give a shit about Dragon's Dogma, and it just looks really good.
Is it too late to put that in my number 3?
It's not too late, please. And then my number 3 would be Death Stranding 2 on the beach. Because I just
every time you say it, I die inside. I just hate that subtitles so much.
It's maybe one of the worst subtitles I've ever heard. But, I mean, come on, we got puppets, we got Troy Baker back. What else can you ask for? Let us know what you thought. What were your standouts? Are you one of these VR perverts? Did you really want to play this new Metro game? Because I tell you what, I sure don't. Jordan, that's our show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having
me. I know, we're all mourning the death of Cayman Darty, but
we are.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Killed him myself. What?
Jordan, where can people find you on the internet? What do you want to promote to our sweet, sweet listeners?
Yes. I am pretty active on Threads and Instagram as far as those types of socials, just Cognitive Clips. You can catch me in the Spotlight Games Discord, probably more than I need to be. You can catch me in the LFG Discord as well, that I have links for. And one of my biggest ventures of the past year is just making some videos for YouTube, mostly video essays, including one about Metroidvanias and just kind of like the genre, what makes a Metroidvania. So that's on YouTube as well. Cognitive Clips. If you like to search for YouTube channels by the little username the little at whatever tag now, Cognitive -clips, but either way,
the hyphen, they got you with the
hyphen. They did.
Bastards. Yeah, go give them a follow, give them a subscribe. And while you're at it, if you don't already, give us a subscribe over on YouTube at Spotlight Games Pod, also on Twitch and Instagram at Spotlight Games Pod. But if you're wanting to follow us on Twitter, that's Spot Games Pod. No light on Twitter because it's a very dark place. You can follow me at Patrick Schwag as well if you want to see what I am saying, but
no one
really cares. But thank you for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Always appreciate when you're here, whether it's live in the chat or later on your own time on the podcast service of your choice. We'll be back next week, hopefully with a dumpster boy. But if not, maybe you're going to be on the show, sweet listener. Only one way to find out, and that's to tune in next week. Bye-bye.